So I want to go ahead and bring on our first guest. He's been sitting with us for a while. We're very excited. I'm going to let you announce him.
Oh, man. So coming up right now, you guys are in for a treat. This is Dr. John Warner. John Warner, we call him. He wrote the book called Slam, Startup Launch Assistant Map. He's written several books before on entrepreneurship, on business. He has been a part of startups. He has been part of large corporations. This guy is one in a million.
Yes.
So here's
and
John.
We've got
John,
him on.
thanks
Hi,
for being on
John.
the show.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
So I want to start with this book of yours. I'm very excited about this book of yours. And Justin keeps bugging me to get it. So I'm going to have to eventually do it because he won't drop it.
That's what it looks like. There it is, right there. So
Slam.
Slam.
Oh, it's got a rocket like us, like Career Launch.
Just like you. I saw that on the show at the beginning. It's the same. It's all about launching.
All right. So tell us so we're going to kind of dive into the mindset here in a second, but we just talked about the difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur. And Business News Daily says that an entrepreneur is somebody who takes greater financial risks. I don't really necessarily agree with that assessment, but the Entrepreneur magazine says they go bigger. They're more about the ideas. They're more about innovation. They're definitely more of risk takers than business owners, and that they're not as sentimental. Like business owners are, I'm doing this jewelry store because I'm passionate about jewelry. I never want to do anything else. I just want to do everything myself. This is what it's going to be. Entrepreneurs are scale, grow, change direction 50,000 times. So what definition do you hold that separates business owner from entrepreneur?
Yeah, I like the idea that innovation separates them. And I think you can split entrepreneurship from entrepreneurial business. Small business owners are entrepreneurial to some degree, but to call yourself an entrepreneur means you're 100% all in on being entrepreneurial all the time, which means you're innovating, you're ideating, you're changing, you're trying to grow. So you're not in a lifestyle business and happy with it. You're trying to take it somewhere bigger, better, faster, smarter. So it's really a scale issue as much as anything.
I would agree with that. I like that definition. I like that. What you going to say?
Good.
Well, you know what, John's interesting because John and I have had conversations in the past before. Luckily, I've been able to express how I feel about entrepreneurship to John. What do you think about the problem-solving aspect of entrepreneurs? So I always, the one that strike me that are the ones that can get to scale. So if that's one of the goals, if that is, they seem to be solving some sort of problem. It's not just finding the gap and where you can fit in, but it's really about innovating into something new. How do you feel about that, John?
Yeah, and that picks up the innovation angle, Justin. You're absolutely right. It's about thinking about unmet needs in a bigger way. And it distinguishes small businesses. Very often if people get involved with a small business, it's an existing need that's well established. They might even buy into a license or a franchise, which is already well established. Usually entrepreneurs are solving for something that no one's solved for before or haven't solved in a particular way. And are trying to take that problem and turn things around, come up with something brand new, different, exciting. That's the big difference, I think, between the two.
I completely agree. Oh, and real quick, we did have a question about LLCs. We're going to be addressing that later with Linnell Renfro-Folk. So I'm going to let the viewer know we are not ignoring your question, but we will be discussing that later with another guest. So on that note, John, because I agree with you, I think that I do think the scaling, I think that I like that you mentioned franchises, because I keep having people message me on LinkedIn. Hey, if I see you're entrepreneurial, don't you want to buy into this franchise? No, that's not, that's not my bag. That's not what I want to do. And I'm off building a whole new product right now. And I've taken a hard left in my business, which I'm very excited about. But that's not something that interests me because I can't do anything with it. I can't be creative. I have no say so. It's just, this is what corporate says. And so that's just what we're going to do. So with the mindset kind of in mind, because so we established that they're creative, they're innovative. What in your experience is the first kind of step to launching then and going, okay, so I have this idea. what do you do next?
So I think there's almost a preliminary step before that first one, and that is to determine your own risk appetite. It's the other thing that distinguishes the business owner from the entrepreneur. You have to go and be comfortable with the whole idea of jumping in and taking a risk.
Yes.
I heard you two talking about it before I came on, and I think that's critical. So your first mindset issue is, if I have an idea, do I want to take it somewhere by myself with all the risks that go with that? So if you separate, let's use franchise as an example, the McDonald brothers and Ray Kroc, who came along, were clearly entrepreneurs in starting the very first business in San Bernardino when they did. But if today you buy a McDonald's franchise, it's de-risked for you. That business is set up, it's got business systems. They're probably going to go and give you not only your product, but many of your customers who already know the brand. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to create that for yourself and figure out what works. So you need an agile mindset and a mindset that's comfortable with risk as the baseline. And you can learn how to do this. So back to what Justin was saying about teaching entrepreneurship, one of the first things we like to teach is how you start evolving a growth mindset so that you can succeed in entrepreneurship in the long term, because it's not for everybody. You can, again, be entrepreneurial, but it's not a path that everyone wants to take up.
That's very true. So what would be the way to start that? What would be the way to start that process in yourself and truly assess your abilities and your risk?
The first is a really honest appraisal of your strengths and weaknesses in terms of what you like to do. So you can start to challenge yourself ahead of the journey. Think about what other entrepreneurs have done. Pay attention, read a lot, listen to shows like this, listen to podcasts, you name it. And get a really good understanding of what that journey looks like. Entrepreneurship is difficult. It's long, it's risky. So do you want that kind of life? It comes with lots of benefits if you're successful. It's a lot of freedom. You're in control of what you want to do. But there's a lot of hard work in the mix. So that really brutal self-assessment is the beginning of this journey. And then it's a commitment to go and say, I'm going to do the work in terms of learning the tools that I need in order to succeed. People think entrepreneurship is a magical thing that, people just are born to it. And that's not true. Entrepreneurship, like any other subject area, if you were trying to be an astrophysicist, you would go to school to learn how to do it. Same with entrepreneurship. There's a rubric that is worth you investing in, understanding, and doing some hard work in order to apply it successfully.
I love that. Justin, thoughts?
Yeah, what John knows what I'm going to say probably is that this mindset thing, and he talks about growth mindset, fixed mindset. By the way, that there's a book called Mindset from Carol Dweck, and a lot of the work that we do at 1IE stems from some of her work. And talking about growth mindset and fixed mindset, it is a journey. I think John touched on it really well. Is that it is a journey of mental gymnastics. Yeah. This is something that you have to look inside yourself and say, I can do this not only today, but I can do it in the next 180 days when things look bleak. And there's a whole chart put out by Paul Graham called the Trough of Sorrow. I mean, it talks about this high. You get this real high at the beginning because you have this idea you're going to make millions. You're going to be the next whatever, and come to find out the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months, you just drop down to this very low place. You have to have the mental fortitude and the belief in yourself that you can do this. Keep doing this day in, day out when nothing goes right.
I agree. And you know what, real quick, we're going to surprise, we have another one of our guests in the wings, Michaela, who kind of does our psychology segments for us. I want to bring her on to talk about this. I saw her waiting. Nina, can we bring her on? Surprise, Michaela. Now you're on the show early.
And Maslow.
And Maslow. Hi, Maslow. So Maslow is a working dog. He's a therapy dog. He has a job. He is entrepreneurial in his own way. He's he's breaking grounds. So Michaela, because we were going to talk about this with you, so I thought it was great that you were on early. We can just go ahead and tie this in. So talk to us a little bit about the anxiety and how that works for in terms of the actual mind and the physiological response and all of that an entrepreneur might see.
So generally what's going to happen with anxiety is that we get this increased heart rate. We get cortisol shooting through the body. And people usually associate cortisol with stress, as they call it the stress hormone. Actually, I think that's a little bit unfair to cortisol, because what cortisol really does is it boosts our energy for response. So with anxiety, what you're going to see is a fight or flight response. And really, what's very interesting to me is that anxiety and excitement are not different. They're the same physiological response. The difference is the thoughts that we tell ourselves about what's going to happen. So with anxiety, what we tend to tell ourselves is like everything that can go wrong. But with excitement, it's everything we tell ourselves that can go right with the situation.
Right.
So that's like the major thing that I see happening.
And so so how do you take it from the anxiety and get yourself back into the excitement mode?
Well, generally what I tend to suggest for people is I never try to change anything, because anxiety is part of our human experience. It's going to be here. And because anxiety and excitement are so similar, they actually tie in really nicely to each other. So what I tend to do is, okay, I have these worries about this event. A lot of times they're really plausible worries. They make sense to the situation. And what I tend to keep them in my mind where I can see them, and that really helps, because if they're back in the background of my mind where I don't have access to them, they're just going to be this nebulous of fear, and I don't know what's going to happen. But what I tend to do is keep them up where I can see them. Like, okay, I'm anxious about these things right here, and then what I also do is I bring in some things I'm excited about, especially since that reaction is so similar. It really brings a balance to be able to say, okay, I'm nervous about these things, I'm excited about these, because they play in so nicely together. And you'd actually be surprised at how easy that is to do.
That's true. I actually do something very similar. Justin and John, thoughts?
So one thing I think I'd add to the mix in all of that is, in entrepreneurship, dealing with your fears is as much about learning to fail as anything else, and then getting back up again. So you've got to be comfortable. If you've got a fixed mindset that says that I'm not willing to fail, you're not going to take the risks that are necessary in the future as they come along, and there'll be risk galore. So it's really learning to fall and then get back up again in a multitude of different ways. So managing your emotions and all of that, and being okay. And sure, I agree with Michaela. I think there's a lot of things around not feeling good about the circumstance you're in, feeling out of your depth, maybe even feeling some shame and all sorts of things, certainly fear and anxiety. It's really about saying those are okay. Those are a normal part of what I'm going to face. But I'm going to be better. I'm going to grow. I'm going to get to a better place. And I think those are the entrepreneurs that succeed in the longer haul.
I agree with you, Justin.
Yeah, I want to add to that even more. I agree completely with what Michaela and John said. I think there's a couple other things that we don't take into consideration usually when we start this journey, and that's the support system we already have around us. And I think that helps you through more of these things. Because generally, if you experience stress in your life, you have family, friends, someone around you that can help you manage that anxiety, as Michaela said, or excitement. But I think in this situation, a lot of times you'll be sometimes outcast by your family, thinking, what a crazy idea. What are you doing? Something's going on with you. So you're going to need to find someone or a tribe of people around you that understand what you are doing. And I think that's really important when we look at building a company or building a startup here, is that you build a tribe around you that believes the same way you do.
I think that's very true, Justin. And I think, so I had an interesting experience building my tribe, because it started as, hey, nobody completely understands this entrepreneurship journey in my life. That's a regular part of my life. So at first, I kind of got what I needed in pieces. So I had, for instance, my mother, who very much understands recruiting and business and all of that, and is very simple. And she's always had this. She and my father both have always had this: you can do anything, you've got it, just don't worry about it, And then Dad, with his work, with his very strong work ethic, even through difficult emotional times, he's been a shining example. I had friends that were very excited you know, and we're just like, this is really cool. Tell us all about it. So I kind of had the rah-rah. And my husband was of course very supportive, but nobody really understood. So I went out and started networking specifically with entrepreneurs to find them and get to know, and successful ones. I want to clarify that. when you're looking for people to be in your tribe, it's always good to have people that are at your stage of the journey too, because you can kind of grow together. But it's very important to have people that have been there and done that, and that are at a different stage than you are. I love talking to what I call the little baby entrepreneurs, that are the little minnows that are just out there getting started in life, you know. But it can be a journey to find your tribe. It's not so easy. And even doing this show, that's grown exponentially for me. So I think, you know, if you don't have that immediately, your friends and family that aren't entrepreneurial, they're not bad people because they don't understand you. It's just not in their wheelhouse. It's just not something that they've experienced.
Right. And that's a perfect segue back. That's a perfect segue back to mindset, is when, you know, the entrepreneurial mindset, you have to find the tribe that has that same sort of mindset. By the way, I don't think you have to find necessarily the one that, at least in a support group, the all of them that go, I'm on the same journey as you. You can have people that are in different places, but they at least understand and they can help you manage day to day. At least have someone to bounce ideas off of, or ideate, or maybe you just want to vent for a while about how painful life is being an entrepreneur, which could be daily. I'm not going to lie. I've complained to John several times about this process. And I think it's important, though. I think you're right. I think it's good to have a group that's diverse enough in terms of experience. They're diverse enough in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, and they can bring some perspective to what you're saying. Because I think you get in the weeds sometimes. I do. I know I get in the weeds, and that mindset of pulling yourself out of that, like, oh God, this didn't happen today. How am I going to accomplish this? I'm never going to get to this. I'm never going to be able to do this. Vent that out. Find someone to go, hey, have you tried this? And you're like, okay, that'll give me down a string of ideas that maybe get me out of where I need to be. That's my
absolutely. No, I think that's spot on. John, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I agree. And there's not much to add. I think mindset, back to learning again, though, is about learning to fail. So and being okay with it. So to your point, Catherine, I think you want a mix of individuals who have succeeded and perhaps failed and have learned the lessons from that and have picked themselves up. So this anchors back to mentoring. You want a range of people who can mentor you in different ways.
And by the way, a lot of,
you know, maybe I didn't get it right the first time. It's just as valuable as I've been super successful.
And a lot of times those are the same people. The people that I know that's true for almost everyone that's been in my life, that's a successful business person. They have been knocked on their butt and then gotten back up, dusted it off, and kept trying.
It's a rare entrepreneur. Yeah, it's a rare entrepreneur that's got it right the first time out of the gate. It's probably less than 1%. So, you know, they're very often their second, third, fourth startup. I've had 3 of my own, and certainly the first 2 were failures. So I learned more from that than I did from the successes.
The first time that I launched Titan, I started off really successful, and then I hate biz dev, and we're going to talk about that later. But I have a deep hatred, not of sales, but of lead generation and business development. Justin's laughing at me, and and so it started to tank after a while, and so I did some other stuff, and I did contract work through Titan and all that, and then I kind of revamped it later, and now it's doing well. So Michaela, when it comes to that, kind of my last question for you on this topic is, when it comes to getting to those parts that you hate, right? Like how I hate lead generation with a passion. Hate is the word that I am using here. How do you,
Catherine, fix mindset?
I know I'm working on that. Actually, trust me, I actually have been going through a whole process. We'll be talking about that later. Michaela, how do you think psychologically? What's a good exercise or a good process to put yourself through to get over that hump?
To get over the hump of something you hate and you don't want to do?
Yes, but it needs to be done.
Humility? No, it's honestly that comes with everything. It really does. But like, I love what I do for a living, and the paperwork is the bane of my existence. I hate it. It's so hard. However, what I tend to do is I see it in the grand scheme, the big picture of things. And that's what tends to move me past it. It's like, okay, I hate this little thing, but in the grand scheme of what I love to do with my life, what I love to do for other people, it's a means to an end. And so that's what I treat it as, and that really keeps me on track.
And I think we can also reframe it, right? So you can use different language so that it's not as scary to us by reframing what it is we're doing. You can stop calling it biz dev if you've got a hatred around it, because you've probably got something of a visceral reaction to it. So just change the terminology.
That's true. No, it's 100% right. And John, thank you so much for coming on. We got to move to our panel section now. It's been a true pleasure. It really, really has. Thank you. And guys, please connect to John on LinkedIn. We've dropped his link into the comments. And his book. Check out Slam. How do they get that?
Slamprocess.com. I think it's going to be in the comments. They'll be put.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we'll put it in the comments, but connect to him, connect to Michaela as well, connect to Justin and I. Also, if you happen to be looking for an opportunity, you can, and you're tuning into the show today, you can go to careerlaunch2020.com.